These are the top 25 monster transformations in the movies. Kicking off our list is a giant monster who goes back a long way. The current MonsterVerse version of Kong is not only badass, but he also gets a sick upgrade here. Honestly, I feel the writers favour him a lot because of all the weapons he keeps getting. I mean, he got an axe which could absorb Godzilla's atomic breath in the previous film, and here our man gets a whole new arm. It may not be a complete transformation, but it is a transition to a better version of himself, so it definitely counts. It helps him recover from Shimo's ice blast, but more importantly, he's basically got the right kind of reinforcement for the final battle. Of course, let's not forget how awesome he looked when he dominated Scar King with his new arm. Not to mention managing to get a couple of hits in with Godzilla too. I swear, those two have the kind of rivalry that even siblings would be jealous of. Up next is Kong's very good buddy and frenemy, Godzilla. But not the version you'd normally associate. Whether it's the MonsterVerse or a low-budget, high-output underdog, one thing's for sure, Godzilla likes to grow. In -1, we first see him as large, but not a monumental monster when he attacks the soldiers at Odo Island. He did have a great entrance here, but as the movie progressed, we could see how he was growing bit by bit. Eventually, Godzilla grew up to a size where he could still munch on battleships as if they were Skittles. Of course, this version is still smaller than the MonsterVerse Godzilla, but the changes in his appearance right till the final scene were nice and subtle, further showcasing how quickly this absolute unit of a monster can grow. Also, he somehow manages to be more violent than the other live-action versions, which makes his behaviour all the more intriguing to break down. There are talks of a sequel in production, so who knows, maybe we'll see an even higher transformation in that film. And number 23 is a dude nobody should ever spend any time with. While the Joker and Art the Clown are horrifying in their own ways, the beginning of Pennywise was a pretty spooky transformation. Seeing him without the costume at first was genuinely terrifying, and the look on Beverly's face here wasn't too different from the rest of us. Pennywise is definitely one of modern horror's scariest characters, and this little clip only adds to his legacy. Look at how he scratches his own face to form the red marks via his own blood. All this time, I was thinking that was just some good old makeup. Add the background music and stoic tone of the scene and you have a clear winner. Man, Bill Skarsgård did such a great job of living up to Tim Curry's legacy. His portrayal is just as iconic in its own way because it's super haunting and creepy, whereas Curry was more like a stereotypical clown.
Babe? Babe?
Okay, now here's a movie that takes body horror almost as seriously as David Cronenberg. You know, they say that too much of a good thing is a bad thing, and this scene right here is strong proof of that. The substance makes a lot of relevant statements regarding today's culture, because if this thing existed in real life, its maker would have easily shot past Elon Musk in the richest billionaires index. Anyway, this hideous transformation hits us all by surprise, and even though it was hinted at throughout the movie that something was messed up was going to happen, Jesus Christ, I wouldn't wish such a fate upon even my worst enemy. The sheer disbelief in Sue's eyes as she looks in the mirror still haunts me. Imagine putting your faith in someone, going under and waking up disfigured by them beyond comprehension. Of course, that's from her perception, because she pretty much brought it upon herself. But yeah, these are the kinds of original movies people should still be making now. Up next is a monster who actually looks good after adding some substances. Godzilla experimenting with his look wasn't on my 2024 bingo card, but the final outcome was pretty cool. Yes, at first, even I wasn't sure about the whole blue to pink design aesthetic, but when I finally saw it on the big screen, I was like, yeah man, own that look. It also helps that he defeated a freaking dragon titan in the form of Tiamat before taking a boost from its lair. The transformation wasn't detailed, but the final form Godzilla showed was definitely worth the wait. Plus, Godzilla was pretty much unstoppable in this movie. Our man was either catching bodies or wanting smoke during the majority of his screen time, and that's exactly what we need from him. Yeah, I never thought a monster could look badass in pink, but the Oju Kaiju can do no wrong, can he? In at number 20 is the most popular monster when it comes to transformations, and in this case, they're even living up to the movie's name, which is literally werewolves. Yeah, these bad boys have been around for ages, but even in 2024, there are people who can still pull off some impressive effects. In this case, it's not just one, but multiple dudes who turn into werewolves. And I must say, apart from a few close-up shots, the transformation process looks pretty sick. You can even see guys like Miles struggling before they activate beast mode in the most literal way. It gets even creepier once the men in the hazmat suits also transform, but yeah, it's the one in the cages that stole the show in my opinion. As I already said, this isn't a perfect sequence, but the VFX artist did get a lot of it right, which is why the scene finds itself on today's video. Now we've got ourselves a rather gruesome downgrade, but an extremely effective trap. The CGI from 2011's The Thing may not be as good as that of the previous entry, but it's the element of shock and surprise that made this scene edge out 2024's werewolves. Juliet turning into the monstrous alien wasn't what Kate had hoped for, but the overall impact of this revelation caught us all off guard. What also helped was the way her transformation was blocked off in the background, so that we couldn't see it completely, while still realizing that Kate is in grave danger. The monster may not win any beauty pageants, but I don't think it's going to lose any sleep over it. Man, I know this isn't the real Juliet, but to see her face make that expression while transforming really stayed with me, even after the movie ended. Next up is another entry from a movie that failed to live up to its predecessor's hype. It's also a case of why should werewolves have all the fun? I'm not sure you've heard the term Wear-jaguar before, but after this entry your monster vocabulary will have expanded. Ben turning into a jaguar does borrow all the typical elements of a werewolf, but the final result is quite different. The CGI isn't too bad, and I like that Ben jumps straight into action, aiding Hellboy against that boar monster, or should I call it wereboar? Anyway, it looks super painful at first, but that could probably be due to the fact that Ben was holding it back for so long. His transformation later on was a lot smoother, so I guess you should just accept who you are, as long as you've got some spare clothes nearby. Number 17 gives us not one, but 3 animals transforming at the same time. I'm surprised 2018's Rampage hasn't seen a sequel yet, because it did decent at the box office and had some nice effects for its core monsters. The whole idea of animals transforming into mutated giants because of some space gas was quite interesting, and all 3 monsters were impressive. Okay, maybe we shouldn't call George a monster because he's the good guy and only grows in size. However, the wolf Ralph and the crocodile Lizzie both had some impressive upgrades. Heck, One could literally fly, and the other was just a few levels shy of reaching Godzilla level height. While the transformations may not be explicitly shown, the before and after visuals were more than enough to sell us on this movie's premise. And also, don't you just love it when a monster roars into the sky before it starts becoming relevant to the plot?
Light him up! Incoming!
Now we've got a second coming of the monster Mothra. They do say that resurrection is the ultimate transformation, so Mothra's entry should make a lot of sense, coming in right outside my top 15. Admit it, all of us have felt bad to see Mothra go after Ghidorah blasted her to bits. But hey, she's Godzilla's bae, so the writers were always going to find a way to bring her back. It's the timing of her arrival that makes the most impact, because we're already in the middle of a very precarious situation. All Gia had to do was raise her hand, and the rest was left to the effects artist. Man, they really made Mothra look so cool with her angelic vibe, but then again, she was the only one who could convince her boyfriend to get along with his rivals, so the timing of her resurrection couldn't have been better. And yes, the best part is that she doesn't die in this movie, meaning we could be getting a couple of vibes from her and Godzilla in the next film. Wait, I don't think I want to see that.
Get back on the table. I can fix this.
Up next is a monster who fits the description both from the outside as well as the inside. But hey, can we really blame Blonsky for doing the bare minimum to fight the Hulk? Abomination had a really cool design from the original movie, but I'm not a big fan of how he now looks more like an Aquaman villain. Anyway, seeing Blonsky go crazy and increase in stature after getting a dose of Banner serum was the perfect build-up to his eventual reveal. We get a full shot later on when he's wreaking havoc in the city, and the colour grading makes him look totally menacing. We also get a semi-transformation from Stearns, who was supposed to turn into the leader, but I guess that's pretty much all we got from the MCU on that character. I still enjoyed how he was casually trying to reason with a 12-foot tall raging monster.
Give me a real fight.
Now we've got ourselves the big daddy of all kaijus. Yes, there's no way you're beating a mega kaiju so easily, and I don't care if you're the main character. Honestly, I was rooting for the giant monster in this scenario because those kids were really getting on my nerves. Well, I should actually be annoyed at the writers of this movie for ruining what would have been a badass franchise. But hey, we don't always get what we want now, do we? Now, the Mega Kaiju's transformation was the most visually appealing aspect of the entire movie, which is rather sad because I quite like the first Pacific Rim movie. Anyway, seeing all those monsters converge into one supreme being was ominous AF. Those Jaegers should have just called it a day and gotten out of there because, let's face it, all of us knew their suits weren't going to do much damage to such a final boss. We're turning back the clock all the way to 1981 for this transformation. It's genuinely one of the creepiest examples you'll ever see in the industry, mainly because the monster wasn't any better when he was a human either. Eddie was a savage beast already, so when he transformed in front of Karen, it almost felt as if he was evolving, just like a Pokemon. Now, I'll admit that this transformation does take up a lot of time, but that's expected considering the movie is 44 years old. The effects are still impressive, and the final werewolf form is pretty horrifying. My only other quip is that Karen should have made a run for it, but I guess she made that sacrifice to give us such an epic scene. Also, we need to remember that this movie didn't have the kind of budget an American Werewolf in London had. Well, how about that? We somehow have Arnold Schwarzenegger in this list. This is when Satan shows his face for good, because he's shown primarily in human form during his screen time in End of Days. Played by a dashing Gabriel Byrne, Satan was easily farming tons of aura, especially when he entered the church while making it shake. However, it's later when he turns into his true form that we really get the money shot of the movie. Jericho is completely powerless here, as he has no chance of fighting such an overpowered being, and I've got to say, those effects were pretty solid for a movie released in 1999. You know, it's really funny that half of the clip is just Arnold turning around and looking confused from numerous different angles. If I was him, I'd get to the chopper immediately, but yeah, we've got to hand it to him. This man fought the Predator and the freaking devil himself. Now that's the true definition of a Giga Chad.
I didn't come here to hurt you. I came here to love you.
I think someone's at the door.
Don't go.
Up next is a movie I haven't really covered a lot of, even despite its crazy 90s popularity. Species may have been primarily successful because of a gorgeous Natasha Henstridge, but the plot isn't all that bad either. Today's video isn't meant to cover either of those topics, so let's move straight to Seal's first proper transformation. Man, I really feel bad for the dude here, because all he did was try to be a good Samaritan. He held what he thought was an injured woman, and didn't even initiate anything while with her. Seal was the aggressor, and the dude even asked her to chill, but then the squad came in, so the crazy alien lady said, "It's morbid time." Just kidding, okay? Her transformation was still awesome to watch though. It traumatized and intrigued me in some strange ways, and perhaps there are a lot of millennial men out there who would empathize with me.
Duck your head!
It's time for my top 10, and as you know, we only have outright winners here. So to kick it off, we have the king of the monsters going nuclear. Yeah, Ghidorah may have thought he was the strongest monster in this verse, but he clearly forgot whose name was in the title of the movie. Also, he really shouldn't have ended Godzilla's girl, because that never ends well for the villain. Getting such a massive surge of power totally meant that Godzilla was going to wreck Ghidorah badly, and his entrance alone was bad enough to make it to the list. There's a marked difference in his creature design, and even though we see this form briefly, it was well worth the payoff. Yes, Pink Godzilla is cool and all, but Thermonuclear Godzilla is the undisputed GOAT.
Forgive me, but we can't hear you. Like country.
Please do something about it!
This is the subject.
Now we have the perfect example of proving your haters wrong. The Wolfman may be one of the biggest flops of the 2010s, but we can't disregard the epic transformation in the movie. The most notable one to me was the court transition, where Talbot gives it back to the Doctor and everyone else who doubted him. The Doctor really should have more presence of mind, but honestly, I think he was only included in the script so that he could be attacked by Talbot in werewolf form. It's a great moment and should actually be used as a reference point for anyone who wants to make a werewolf transformation look cool in the modern era.
Where your land of fiction gets it right.
Up next is a shock transformation right when you least expected it. The Faculty is a strange kind of movie, as it misleads the audience into rooting against the secondary antagonist without realizing that the real alien queen was Mary Beth all along. This reveal, backed up by her transformation, was such a high-impact moment, which must have been the defining point wherein audiences realized, okay, this one's different. The alien queen's design is quite disgusting, which is what makes her work as a final boss. And yes, I'm sure taking her on would have helped Elijah Wood gain the necessary experience to fight Sauron and co. in Lord of the Rings as Frodo. In at number 7 is Jeff Goldblum turning into a literal nightmare. These were the days before Jurassic Park, but even then, Goldblum was looked at as a charismatic man who could make all the ladies go weak for him. He does something similar as Seth Brundle by cozying up with Veronica, but there's no amount of riz that can save you from turning into a freaking fly. The transformation from human to giant insect was disturbing to watch. That's exactly why David Cronenberg is this high up on the list. He may not make such movies now, but he's definitely traumatized me enough for it not to be a problem. Up next is another shocking horror transformation brought to you by the director of Superman. Yeah, I don't know how James Gunn ended up becoming such a stalwart in the comic book movie industry, but he was definitely in his element when he was making movies like Slither. Grant's transformation into whatever the heck that monster's supposed to be called is slow, gradual, and horrifying. The creature design is great and effective because it makes me want to throw up just by looking at it. We do feel bad for Grant, but once you become a slimy monster, the audience ain't gonna give you any sympathy. Well, at least it'd go on to raise Star-Lord later on.
This cannot be.
If you're going to break into my top 5, you need to have a lot going for you. As it happens, the final battle of Van Helsing had 2 monster transformations at the same time, so the sequence is already goated. I mean, there's Hugh Jackman turning into a werewolf, but then we also have freaking Dracula turning into his bat monster form, or whatever the heck it's called. The fight was epic by all means, but the effects were even more impressive, considering there was so much fluidity in the battle. We all love watching werewolves versus vampires, and this scene gives us exactly that while also having both characters shifting forms multiple times.
Don't be afraid, Gabriel. Don't be afraid.
Some things are better left forgotten.
Up next is a short and sweet transformation, and no, that's not a reference to Sabrina Carpenter's album. After all, it makes no sense to compare a petite pop star to a savage, monstrous werewolf. Now, there was the obvious option of including Michael's transformation, but honestly, I prefer Quint because it feels so raw and chaotic. The camera moves in a way as if it's genuinely following Quint's transition, and we see a full body transformation, so it gets my vote of approval. And of course, I think it's safe to say that this werewolf looks a lot more intimidating than anything else in the movie. Look who's here at number 3. Sir Jorah Mormont had enough of the friend zone, so I guess him crashing out like this was somewhat expected. Yes, I know this movie came out before Game of Thrones, but the TV region prides itself on its references, so don't come at me in the comments because I've already fact-checked myself, okay? Anyway, Dr. Isaacs turning into that tyrant zombie monster was surprisingly great to witness. Right from his shock revival after getting shot to his final form while fighting Alice, this dude was an absolute menace and is totally deserving of the number 3 spot. I mean, it did come out of nowhere, so I guess the shock value elevates the transformation. Barely missing out on the top spot is a gem that I personally feel is John Carpenter's best work. Yes, I think 1982's The Thing is better than Halloween, but let's focus on some dogs who aren't good boys at all. This movie may not have been loved when it first came out, but it's an all-time horror classic now because of scenes like The Thing assimilating all the dogs early on in the movie. Since the team used practical effects, this feels so much more real compared to the 2011 prequel, and we should also consider the fact that nobody was expecting the monster to make its appearance like this. There's the additional heartache of watching so many huskies meeting their end, but the transformation quickly made the audience realise the kind of threat they were dealing with. At numero uno is the only right answer for a list like this. Yeah, you could come up with masterpiece after masterpiece, but nothing's ever beating this one when it comes to monster transformations. This one scene is the reason why An American Werewolf in London is still talked about in pop culture today. Sure, it's a great movie too, but without his transformation, I suppose it would have only been reduced to a classic treasured by the cinephiles and film bros. David Norton's performance was exaggerated to the right degree, as it almost made us feel the same pain his character was feeling during the transformation. And yes, to have been able to pull this off way back in 1981 with no CGI at all is an achievement and a half. Werewolf transformations may be cliche and all, but I'm sure you'll agree when I say that this particular scene is the undisputed champion of movie transformations.
Please let me help you.
Hope you liked the video, please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're going to enjoy.